here in my own account, and we're going to produce some SQL which will create our database for us. We do it by drawing an entity relationship diagram to start with, converting that automatically to a schema, which is the tables, and then converting those automatically to SQL, which we will take elsewhere and create our database. So we start off with a diagram, call it anything we like, create it. There we go. So we want some entities. We'll have, say, patron, add attribute, patron ID. We want this to be unique, so it can be the primary key. We'll add another attribute, say name. Pull this down a bit. There we go. Another entity, say book. Add an attribute to that, unique ISBN, that'll identify it. And we'll give it also a title. Say. Now, both of these things can have a lot more, would ordinarily have a lot more attributes than just these two, but I'm just showing the principles here. Then we want to have a relationship between these two, in particular that patrons can borrow books, but we need to go careful. So we're looking at individual copies of books. So a book can be borrowed by a single patron, and that's that. But a patron can borrow several books, so it's a many-one relationship. What we need to go careful with when we set this up is that what you call the crow's foot is on the kind of book side. You'll see what I mean shortly. So we're going to have a relationship. So that's, we'll just call it borrowed by. That's good. And we click on that. So this relationship, let me just pull this a little bit more into screen for you. Maybe that's better. It goes between patrons and books. And so maybe I'll bring that down a little bit so you can see better. And this, I think that ErdPlus has this the wrong way around, but never mind. You'll see what I'm going to say about the crow's foot. So this is going to be one to many is the relationship. Now, if you come over here and have a look at this crow's foot's on the wrong side because it's the many books. So I'm going to change that to many and that to one. That's good. It's good now. All right, so let's just straighten it out a little bit. Just drag these as you want to have them. Okay, that's good. Now, what this is going to do when it's converted to a schema into a table is on the book side, there's going to be a field called borrowed by, and it's going to have the patron ID in it. It only needs to have one of those, per book, because it's only going to be borrowed by one patron. But it's a more interesting case is if you have many-to-many relationship, and that requires another table in the middle here. So why don't I create something that does that? So I add another entity here. Say we call author. I'll add an attribute, so author ID again, which is going to be the primary key. So we want that to be unique. I want it to be optional. That's good. We'll add an attribute, so we'll go name again for the author. It's good. We don't want this extra thing, so let's delete that. Okay, we'll have a relationship here between these two. I don't know, authored by maybe, or written by. Okay, that's good. Select that. So now this time an author can write several books, but also several authors can write the same book. So it's many to many. It wants to go between book and author, many to many. Let's pull this out. So you now see the crow's feet on either side. So we're good here basically. There may be some things I need to tidy up slightly later. Okay, so we've got this. So now we want to go back to our documents and just move it again so you can see it. Select this here. Oh, sorry. Go back to the document. Don't select it. Come here. And it said convert to relational schema. So this is now going to create the tables for you. So there it goes. We'll create and edit. So there it is. So just going to pull it out so I can inspect it a little bit. So we've got here. Maybe I'll pull it like that so you can see it the same. So what you'll see here, this is sort of interesting. So you get a good idea of, I don't know, is that between patron and book, there's no table that needs to be inserted because there's the extra field on the book that says the patron ID of the patron that's borrowing the book. But for the many, they've got to put in a table in between, and that has the primary key from the book and the primary key from the author. He's calling it a foreign key here. So this is good. I did not say earlier, but you could have added fields to this, like the date of the borrowing, or the date of the authoring. This is not the borrowing. This is author and book. Now there's a few things we want to straighten out. So we want to just look at what the fields are. So if we come here, and I'll bring that into shot again a little bit. So this is a patron, and this is the bit I want to look at. So the patron ID's got a primary key and everything like that. We're good with that. The data type of it is an integer. That's fine. So it's a number. But the name is an integer. You don't want that. The name is so click on the integer here. It'll give you a choice of things that it can be. Now, char is some characters of fixed length. Varchar's characters of variable length. Really, we want varchar, so that's what we want. And we need to pick a number for how many there's going to be. I'm not sure, but it doesn't really matter. 128, say. Oops, 128. Doesn't make any difference, this part of it. It does need to be there. Okay, that's good. So let's look at book now. Same thing. Title wants to be a varchar 128 or whatever. Doesn't matter. So author ID. That also wants to got a name. Wants to be a varchar. And it needs to have a number here, say 128. Right, so I think we're good now. Now, as I said, we could have added more attributes, first of all, in the original diagram. Then would have given us more fields in this. We can add more fields now if we wanted to, but this is enough to show you what is what. Okay, so go back to the documents again. And this is the relational schema now. There's the diagram. Here's the schema. So come over again. Sorry, I should have picked a larger screen. And come over to here and say generate SQL. And there it is. So this is the bit that we want, because this here will allow us to create our database. So this is a patron table, a book table, author by table. So if you look through these just to get a bit of an idea, patron can't have a null name. Well, it could be an empty string there. Book. Now there is the foreign keys of the patron ID. It's the person that's borrowing the book, and it comes from the patron table. It comes from this table. That's where the foreign key comes from. Author. Now we've got that's similar to the ones up here, but now the authored by table. That is the jump table or junction table in between, and carries the connection between the ISBN of the book, and the author ID. Okay, so then we just want to copy that, or just copy it from here, and then we'll go on to create a database.